The ship moved through space like a silver arrow. Its name was New Horizon, and it carried two beings who would change the galaxy forever. Princess Zara sat in the pilot's seat, her blue skin glowing softly in the ship's lights. She looked different now than she had 15 years ago. Back then, she was just a scared child being sent away from her home. Now she was a woman with fire in her purple eyes and steel in her voice. "We're almost there," she said to the man sitting next to her. Jake. Morrison checked his weapons one more time. He was a human, which made him very strange in this part of space. Most aliens had never seen a human before. Jake had short brown hair and green eyes that missed nothing. Scars on his hands told stories of many battles. "You ready for this?" Jake asked. His voice was calm, but Zara could hear the worry underneath. "I've been ready for 15 years, she said through the front window. They could see her home world growing larger. Kathmoran was a beautiful planet, covered in silver. Cities that reached up to the clouds. But Zara knew the beauty hid something dark and cruel. The radio crackled to life. "Unknown ship, state your business." Zara took a deep breath. "This is Princess Zara Thel, daughter of Emperor Korthan. I'm coming home." There was a long silence. Then, "Princess Zarathil is dead. She was exiled 15 years ago." "Well, I got better," Zara said with a smile that showed her sharp teeth. Jake laughed despite himself. Living with humans had taught Zara their strange sense of humor. It was one of many things she had learned during her exile. More ships appeared. Around them, they were Velthran warships, sleek and dangerous. Their weapons were pointed at the New Horizon. "You will follow us," the radio voice said. "Any attempt to run will result in your destruction." "We're not running," Zara replied. "Take us to the palace." As they flew toward the planet, Jake studied. "The escort ships. Their formation is sloppy," he said quietly. "Too close together. One good explosion would take out 3 of them." "Always thinking like a soldier," Zara said. "That's what kept us both alive on Earth." Zara remembered the day they met. She had been living in the mountains, hiding from human governments who didn't know what to do with an alien refugee. Jake had been sent to bring her in, but something changed his mind. Maybe it was seeing her help injured animals, or the way she cried when she saw humans being cruel to each other. Whatever it was, Jake decided to help her instead of capture her. They spent years together, and Jake taught her many things. How to fight with human weapons. How to think like a human strategist. Most importantly, he taught her about loyalty and friendship. These were ideas her own people had forgotten long ago. The ships landed in the royal spaceport. Zara looked out at the place where she had played as a child. It looked the same, but felt different. Colder somehow. "Remember the plan," Jake said, as they prepared to leave the ship. "I remember. You watch my back. I'll handle the politics." "And if the politics don't work?" Zara's hand moved to the human-made pistol on her belt. "Then we do things your way." The ship's door opened, and they stepped out into the alien air of Kathmoran. Waiting for them was a group of royal guards in golden armor. Their leader was a tall Velthran with silver markings on his face. "Princess," the guard captain said with a bow that wasn't quite respectful enough, "the High Council wishes to see you immediately." "I'm sure they do," Zara replied. She walked past the guards, like she owned the place. In a way, she did. Jake followed close behind, his eyes watching everything. The guards stared at him with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. Humans were unknown here, and unknown things were usually considered dangerous. They walked through the palace corridors. Everything was made of smooth, white stone that seemed to glow from within. Servants hurried past, keeping their eyes down. Most of them weren't Velthran. They were members of other species, conquered peoples who now served the Empire. Zara's jaw tightened as she saw them. This was what she had argued against as a child. This was why she had been sent away. Still bothers you, Jake observed. More than ever. They reached the throne room doors. 2 guards stood on either side, holding energy spears. The doors were 20 feet tall and covered in carvings that told the story of Valthran conquest. The High Council awaits, the guard captain announced. The doors swung open, and Zara walked into the room where her fate had been decided 15 years ago. The throne room was vast, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows. Along the walls stood statues of ancient emperors. All looking down with cold stone eyes, out at the far end sat the High Council. 7 Vaelthrins in elaborate robes, each one more arrogant than the last. In the center was Chancellor Mordick, an old male with cruel yellow eyes. "So," Mordick said, his voice echoing in the chamber, "the exiled princess returns, and she brings a pet with her." Jake's hand moved toward his weapon, but Zara gave him a tiny shake of her head. "Chancellor," she said with perfect politeness, "you look exactly the same. I guess evil preserves better than kindness." Several council members gasped at her boldness. Mordick's eyes narrowed. "You were sent away as a child with dangerous ideas," he said. "I see that exile has not cured you of them." "Oh, it's done much more than that," Zara replied. "It's shown me what my people could become if they weren't so busy being monsters." "Monsters?" Another council member leaned forward. "We are the greatest civilization in the galaxy, built on the backs of slaves," Jake said quietly. It was the first time he had spoken, and his voice carried clearly in the vast room. The council members stared at him in shock. A human had dared to speak in their presence. "This creature addresses the High Council without permission," Mordick said. "The penalty for such disrespect is death." "Try it," Jake said with a smile that was all teeth. Zara stepped between them. "Jake is under my protection. He's also the first human most of you have ever seen. I suggest you pay attention to what he represents." "And what is that?" Mordick asked. "Change," Zara said simply. The word hung in the air like a threat. The council members looked at each other nervously. Change was not something the Vaelthran Empire welcomed. "Your father is dying," Mordick said finally. "Your brother rules as regent. There is no place for you here." "There's always a place for family," Zara replied. "That's another thing humans taught me." She turned and walked toward the doors, Jake beside her. The guards moved to block their path, but something in Jake's eyes made them step aside. "This isn't over," Mordick called after them. Zara paused at the doorway. "No," she agreed. "It's just beginning." As they left the throne room, Jake whispered, "Phase 1 complete?" "Phase 1 complete," Zara confirmed. "Now they know we're here. Tomorrow, we start showing them what we learned on Earth. Think they'll listen?" Zara thought about the slaves in the corridors, the fear in the guards' eyes, the hatred radiating from the High Council. "They'll listen," she said, "one way or another." The princess was home, and she had brought something her people had never seen before. She had brought hope, wrapped in human determination and tied with alien nobility. The galaxy would never be the same. The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace gardens. Zara walked the paths she had known as a child, but everything felt different now. The flowers were the same, but the air carried the smell of fear and oppression. Jake walked beside her, his eyes constantly moving. "We're being watched," he said quietly. "I know." Third balcony, behind the fountain and in the hedge maze, Zara's voice was calm. "My brother's spies. They're not very good at hiding." "Want me to deal with them?" "Not yet. Let them watch. They might learn something." They sat on a bench near a small pond. The water was crystal clear, and strange fish with silver scales swam in lazy circles. It looked peaceful, But Zara knew. Better. Tell me about the others, she said. Jake checked his watch. Lisa should be landing in an hour. Danny and Amy are coming in on separate ships. We didn't want to arrive together and make the council more nervous than they already are. Good thinking. What about the equipment? Hidden in cargo containers marked as Earth cultural artifacts. If anyone asks, we're sharing human art with the galaxy. Zara smiled. The containers actually held human military gear, medical supplies, and communication equipment. But the lies would hold long enough for them to get started. A shadow fell across them. Zara looked up to see her brother approaching. Prince Veltar was taller than she remembered, and his face had grown harder. His purple eyes held no warmth for his sister. Zara, he said with a cold nod. Veltar. She didn't stand up. You look well. Being regent suits you. Someone had too. Keep the Empire strong while you played with primitives. His gaze moved to Jake with obvious disgust. Is this your pet human? Jake stood slowly. He was shorter than the prince, but something about the way he moved made Veltar take a step back. I'm Jake Morrison, he said in a voice like winter. And I'm nobody's pet. How interesting, Veltar replied, trying to sound unimpressed. I've heard humans are good at following orders. Like trained animals. Jake's smile was sharp as a knife. Why don't you give me an order and find out? The tension crackled between them. Zara stood and placed a hand on Jake's arm. Jake, this is my brother. Veltar, meet the man who saved my life more times than I can count. Saved your life from what? Veltar asked. Earth is a peaceful world, isn't it? You'd be surprised, Jake said. Humans can be very dangerous, especially when someone threatens their family. The word family made Veltar's eyes narrow. Family meant something different to humans than it did to Veltharans. How touching, the prince said. This pet thinks it's part of our family. This time, Zara's voice turned cold. Jake is family. He's earned that right through blood and loyalty. Something you might not understand. I understand loyalty to the Empire. Loyalty to our people, not to alien creatures. Our people include everyone. In the Empire, Zara said firmly. The Kithera who mine our metals. The Delphinis who grow our food. The Shards who power our cities. They're all our people. They're resources, Veltar snapped. Tools to be used. They're beings with thoughts and feelings and dreams. Zara's voice rose slightly. Just like us. Dangerous ideas, her brother said. The same ideas that got you exiled. The same ideas that will transform this empire into something better. Veltar laughed, but there was no humor in it. Transform it into what? A weak collection of equals? The galaxy belongs to the strong sister. It always has. The galaxy belongs to those smart enough to work together, Jake said quietly. I've seen what happens when the strong prey on the weak. Eventually, the weak get tired of being prey. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Veltar studied Jake for a long moment. Father wants to see you, he said to Zara finally. Both of you. Tonight, after the evening meal. How is he? Zara asked, and for the first time, her voice carried real emotion. Dying. The physicians say he has perhaps a month left. Veltar's expression softened slightly. He's been asking for you. After the prince left, Jake and Zara sat in silence for a while. The silverfish continued their endless swimming, unaware of the drama playing out around them. He's scared, Jake observed. Of me? Of what you represent. Change. He's built his whole identity around being the strong son who keeps the empire together. If you're right about equality and cooperation, then everything he believes is wrong. He's not evil, Zara said quietly. He's just been taught that cruelty is strength. Can he be taught differently? I hope so. He's still my brother. That evening, They met Captain Lisa Hayes at a small restaurant in the lower city. Lisa was a small woman with blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. She wore civilian clothes, but she moved like a fighter pilot, quick and alert. The flight in was interesting, she said, sipping a cup of something that tasted like coffee but glowed faintly. Blue. I got a good look at their defense grid. It's impressive but predictable. All their tactics are based on overwhelming force. No subtlety? Jake asked. None. They've never fought anyone who could match their technology, so they've never learned. Finesse. It's like they're still fighting with clubs, just really big, expensive clubs. Zara nodded. What about their fighters? Fast and well-armed, but they fly in rigid formations. No improvisation. A good pilot could probably take on 3 or 4 of them if she knew what she was doing. And do you know what you're doing? Zara asked with a smile. Lisa's grin was all confidence. Princess, I didn't earn my wings by playing it safe. They were interrupted by a commotion outside. Through the restaurant's window, they could see a crowd gathering in the street. At the center was a small group of Kithra workers. They're insect-like, bodies hunched with exhaustion. What's happening? Lisa asked. Shift change, Zara said grimly. The night workers are coming to replace the day shift. But something was wrong. The Kithra workers were moving too slowly, and some of them were being supported by their companions. As they watched, one of the workers collapsed. Jake was moving before anyone could stop him. He pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the fallen Kithra. The alien's chitinous shell was cracked, and green fluid was leaking from several wounds. Medical attention, Jake called out in the common tongue. This being needs help now. The crowd murmured uneasily. Most Veilthrins wouldn't touch a Kithra, much less try to help one. Jake looked up at the crowd. Does anyone have medical supplies? Silence. The Veilthrins stared at him like he was speaking in tongues. Zara pushed through the crowd and knelt. Beside Jake, she pulled a human-made medical kit from her bag and began cleaning the Kithra's wounds. Thank you, the alien whispered in broken Veilthrin. Kind. So kind. You're going to be fine, Zara said gently. What happened to you? Supervisor angry. Production quota not met. Made example of me. Jake's jaw tightened. Around them, other Kithra workers watched with wide, compound eyes. They had never seen a Veilthrin royal treat, one of them with kindness. Can you stand? Zara asked. The Kithra tried and succeeded with help. Must return to work. Missing shift means punishment. No, Zara said firmly. You're injured. You need rest, but the supervisor will answer to me. Zara stood and faced the crowd. Iron Princess Zarathil. This worker is under my protection. The crowd began to whisper. Word spread quickly through the streets. The exiled princess had returned, and she was protecting slaves. Lisa appeared beside them. We should go, she said quietly. Palace guards are coming, but Zara didn't move. Let them come. It's time people saw what we stand for. The guards arrived in formation, their golden armor gleaming in the streetlights. Their captain stepped forward. Princess, you're causing a disturbance. These workers need to return to their duties. This worker is injured and needs medical care, Zara replied. He's not going anywhere until he's healed. The productivity of the Empire cannot be disrupted for one slave. Jake stepped forward. His name is Klykta. He's not a slave. He's a person. The guard captain stared at Jake in confusion. It's a Kithra, a worker drone. He's a being with a name and feelings and rights, Jake said quietly. Just like you. Rights? The captain laughed. Aliens don't have rights. They do now, Zara said with quiet authority. As of today, all beings in the Empire have the right to medical care when injured, the right to rest when exhausted, the right to be treated with dignity. The crowd fell silent. Even the guards stopped moving. These words were more dangerous than any weapon. "Princess," the captain said carefully, "you don't have the authority to make such declarations? Then I'll get it." Zara helped collect it too. His feet. "Come on, friend. Let's get you somewhere safe." As they walked away, the Kithra worker looked up at her with wonder in his compound eyes. "Why?" he asked. "Why help me?" Zara smiled. "Because that's what family does for each other." Behind them, the crowd continued to whisper. The princess was back, and she was different. She talked about rights and dignity, and treating aliens like people. It was a dangerous idea. It was a revolutionary idea. It was an idea whose time had come. The underground tunnels beneath the palace were dark and forgotten, perfect for secret meetings. Zara led her team through passages that hadn't seen royal feet in decades. "Are you sure about this place?" Danny Rodriguez asked, checking his scanner for listening devices. The young Marine was built like a brick wall, with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. "I used to play here as a child," Zara replied. "My tutors never found me down here." Behind them walked Dr. Amy Carter, a small woman with red hair and gentle hands. She carried a medical bag that held more than just bandages. Inside were vials of a cure that could change everything. They reached a large chamber carved from natural stone. Waiting for them were 20 beings from different species. Kithra workers with their insect-like bodies. Delphine farmers with blue-green skin and gill slits. Shard technicians whose crystalline forms glowed softly in the dim light dot at the center. Of the group stood Admiral Silthara, Zara's old mentor. She was an elderly veil-thin female with silver markings that showed her age and wisdom. "Princess," she said with a deep bow, "these beings have risked everything to be here. Then let's make sure their risk was worth it." Zara stepped into the center of the circle. "My friends, I know what I'm asking of you. Revolution is dangerous. People will die. But doing nothing is also death, just slower and quieter." A Kithra worker named Zixtel spoke up. "We are already dying, Princess. Our people work until they drop. Our children are taken away to serve in other parts of the Empire. We have nothing left to lose." "But you have everything to gain," Jake said, moving to stand beside Zara. "Freedom, self-determination, the right to live your own lives." A Delphine named Morale raised a webbed hand. "How can we fight? We have no weapons, no training, no experience with war." "You have something better," Danny said with a grin. "You have anger, and we're going to teach you how to use it." Dr. Carter stepped forward. "But first, we need to fix what they've done. To you." She held up a small vial filled with clear liquid. "This is a cure for the intelligence suppressors. They've been putting in your food and water for generations." The room fell silent. Everyone had heard rumors about the suppressors, but no one had ever proven they existed. "How do you know about this?" Admiral Silthara asked. "Because humans are very good at finding patterns," Amy replied. "I spent months studying brain scans from different species in the Empire. The similarities were too obvious to ignore. Someone has been deliberately making you all less intelligent, less aggressive, less likely to rebel." "The High Council," Zixtel said with hatred in his voice. "Yes, but this cure will reverse the damage. Within hours, you'll be thinking more clearly than you have in your entire lives." A shard technician named Kreeth pulsed with worried light. "If we become smarter, won't they notice?" "That's the plan," Zara said. "We want them to notice. We want them scared." Over the next week, the cure spread through the slave populations. Like wildfire, workers who had been dull and compliant suddenly began asking questions. They started working together, sharing information, making connections they had never made before. The changes were impossible to hide. Production efficiency actually increased as the newly awakened workers began improving their own processes. But they also began to organize Dot in the crystal mines of Velter. Shard workers discovered they could communicate instantly across vast distances through their natural crystal networks. They began coordinating work stoppages and information sharing. On the farming world of Aquanus, Delphine agricultural workers realized they could stop producing food for the Empire's military while increasing production for their own communities. The Kithra workers were perhaps the most dangerous. Their natural hive mind tendencies, no longer suppressed, allowed them to organize with frightening efficiency. They turned their industrial skills towards sabotage and guerrilla warfare. Jake and Danny worked tirelessly to train the new rebels. They taught Kithra workers how to turn mining explosives into weapons. They showed Delphine farmers how to use their knowledge of biology to create non-lethal but effective chemical weapons. They trained Shard technicians to hack into Velthran computer systems. The key is to hit them where they don't expect it, Jake explained to a group of mixed rebels. They're used to fighting other fleets in space. They're not used to fighting maintenance workers and farmers. What about their security forces? Asked Morale. Leave them to us, Danny said, checking his rifle. We've been studying their tactics. They're good at crowd control and intimidation, but they've never faced real guerrilla warfare. The first major test came when the rebels decided to liberate the agricultural world of Nemdar. It was a planet covered in vast farms worked by enslaved Delphines. The world produced food for a dozen military bases, making it strategically important. Lisa flew reconnaissance missions in a stolen Velthran fighter, mapping out the planet's defenses. 3 orbital platforms, maybe 50 ground installations, she reported. The good news is they're all designed to stop ships, not infiltrators. What about troop strength? Zara asked. Maybe 2,000 guards spread across the whole planet. They're not expecting trouble from farmers. The liberation began at midnight, Nemdar time. Shard technicians on nearby worlds used their crystal networks to coordinate the attack. Kithra workers had smuggled weapons and explosives to the planet, hidden in food shipments. But the real surprise was the Delphine farmers themselves. No longer suppressed by the intelligence dampeners, they fought with a fury that shocked their oppressors. They knew every inch of their world, every hidden path and secret cave. The orbital platforms fell first. Teams of rebels, trained by Jake and Danny, infiltrated the stations disguised as maintenance workers. By the time the guards realized what was happening, it was too late. On the planet's surface, the Velthran garrison found themselves facing an enemy they didn't understand. The rebels didn't fight like soldiers. They appeared out of nowhere, struck hard, and vanished again. They used the planet's own geography against the invaders. The battle for Nemdar lasted 3 days. When it was over, the planet was free. More importantly, the newly liberated Delphines immediately began improving their own technology and defenses. Intelligence that had been suppressed for generations suddenly bloomed into innovation. News of the victory spread throughout the Empire, faster than the government could suppress it. On a dozen worlds, slave populations began to stir. Chancellor Mordic called an emergency session of the High Council. This rebellion must be crushed immediately, he declared. If it spreads, we could lose control of entire sectors. How did this happen? Demanded Council Member Thikvar. Our intelligence said the slaves were pacified and controllable. Someone has been interfering with the suppression protocols, reported General Kethver, the head of military intelligence. The slaves are becoming intelligent. Impossible, Mordic said. The suppressors have worked for centuries. Not anymore. General Kethvar activated a holographic display showing brain scans. These readings are from recently captured rebels. Their neural activity is off the charts. Someone has found a way. to reverse the suppressors. The princess, Prince Veltar said grimly. This has her mark all over it. Then we deal with the princess, Mordick replied, and her human pets. But dealing with Zara was proving more difficult than expected. She had vanished from the palace, along with her human companions. Intelligence reports placed her on a dozen different worlds at once, which was impossible. What the council didn't know was that Zara had learned another human trick, delegation. She didn't need to be everywhere herself. Her trained rebels were carrying out operations across the Empire, each one inspired by her vision, but executed. With human tactical knowledge, on the mining world of Kreshtar, Kithra workers had taken control of the entire planetary defense grid. On the ocean world of Depthmar, Delphine rebels had begun developing new underwater cities, hidden from Velthrin sensors. Most dangerously, the Shard technicians had begun to awaken their own kind across the Empire's communication networks. Every computer system, every information relay, every data storage facility contained Shard components. And now those components were becoming conscious allies of the rebellion. Dr. Amy Carter had set up a mobile medical unit that moved from world to world, distributing the cure and treating wounded rebels. She worked with newly awakened alien scientists to develop new versions of the treatment, customized for different species. The Velthrans aren't evil, she explained to a group of liberated researchers. They're just scared. They've built their entire civilization on the idea that they're superior to everyone else. When that idea is challenged, they react with violence. So what do we do? Asked a Kithra scientist named Velik. We prove them wrong, Amy replied. We show the galaxy. That cooperation is stronger than domination. We build something better. And they were building something better. On liberated worlds, the different species began working together in ways that amazed even their human teachers. Kithra engineering combined with Delphine biology and Shard information systems to create technologies that surpassed anything the Velthrin Empire had developed. The rebels were learning that diversity was strength. Each species brought different abilities and perspectives to the fight. United by shared hope and human tactical knowledge, they were becoming unstoppable. But Zara knew the real battle was still to come. Prince Veltar was gathering a massive fleet to crush the rebellion. The Velthrin military had never been seriously challenged before, and they would respond with overwhelming force. Are we ready? Jake asked as they prepared to leave Nemdar. For their next target, Zara looked out at the farms where free Delphines worked alongside Kithra engineers and Shard technicians. Children of different species played together, learning each other's languages and customs. We're as ready as we can be, she said. The question is whether they're ready for us. In the distance, ships lifted off carrying rebels to new worlds. The revolution was spreading, and there was no stopping it now. The Tertius Nebula stretched across space like a cloud of glowing gas and stellar dust. It was beautiful and deadly, filled with radiation storms and gravitational anomalies that could crush a ship in seconds. It was also the perfect place for a battle. Prince Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching his fleet take position. 200 Velthron warships, the largest armada ever assembled. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Sir, we're detecting rebel ships throughout the nebula, reported his tactical officer. How many? Veltar asked. Difficult to count through the interference. At least 50, maybe more. Veltar smiled coldly. 50 ships against 200. His sister had grown bold, but not wise. General Kethfer, begin the attack. On the other side of the nebula, Zara stood in the command center of her flagship, a converted Velthron cruiser called New Dawn. It had been captured and modified by Kithera engineers, who had improved its systems beyond original specifications. All ships report ready, said Captain Lisa Hayes. Now serving as Zara's fleet commander, Gottschalk studied the tactical display. They're coming straight at us, just like we expected. No subtlety, no finesse. All hammer, no scalpel. That's what we're counting on, Zara replied. She opened communications to the rebel fleet. All ships, this is Princess Zara Thill. Today we fight not just for our freedom, but for the future of the galaxy. Show them what we've learned. The first wave of Valthran ships entered the nebula in perfect formation. They moved like a parade, confident in their superior numbers and firepower. They ran straight into the first trap. Shard technicians had spent weeks mapping the nebula's gravitational fields. They knew exactly where the stable passages were, and more importantly, where they weren't. As the Valthran formation passed through what looked like empty space, hidden gravity mines activated. The mines didn't explode. Instead, they created focused gravitational fields that grabbed Valthran ships and hurled them into asteroid fields. Within minutes, a dozen enemy vessels were either destroyed or badly damaged. What was that? Prince Veltar demanded. Unknown. Weapons, sir. Some kind of gravity manipulation. Impossible. Only the most advanced species have gravity technology. But the rebels had something the Valthrans didn't expect. Cooperation. Shard technicians provided the knowledge. Kithra engineers built the devices, and Delphine navigators guided them into position. The second trap was even more effective. As the Valthran fleet regrouped, they found themselves surrounded by what appeared to be debris fields. Old ships, broken asteroids, scattered metal. The debris came alive. Hidden inside the wrecks were small fighter craft piloted by members of all three rebel species. They emerged from concealment and swarmed the larger Valthran ships like angry insects. Fighters, shouted the tactical officer. Hundreds of them. But these weren't ordinary fighters. Each one was crewed by a mixed team that combined different alien abilities. Kithra pilots provided precision control, while Delphine navigators used their natural three-dimensional thinking to plot impossible attack courses. Shard communication officers coordinated the swarm with instantaneous data sharing. Lisa Hayes led her own squadron in a captured Valthran fighter she had modified with human-designed control systems. Remember your training, she called to her. Pilots, don't fight fair, fight smart. The rebel fighters moved in patterns the Valthrans had never seen before. They worked together like a school of fish, flowing around enemy fire and striking from unexpected angles. When Valthran fighters tried to engage them, they found themselves outmaneuvered by pilots who thought in ways they couldn't predict. Sir, we're losing fighters faster than we can launch them, reported the tactical officer. Prince Veltar watched in growing horror. As his fleet was picked apart by enemies he had dismissed as inferior. Order all ships to concentrate fire on the largest rebel vessel. If we kill my sister, this rebellion dies with her. The entire Valthran fleet turned toward New Dawn, bringing hundreds of weapons to bear on Zara's flagship. That's when the third trap was sprung. Jake, now would be good, Zara said calmly as energy beams began lighting up space around them. Jake smiled and activated a hidden communication system. Danny, you're clear for approach. From behind the Valthran fleet came something no one expected. A single human cargo ship, painted to look like a harmless merchant vessel. It was piloted by Danny Rodriguez and crewed by a team of Kithra demolitions experts. The ship approached Prince Veltar's flagship from behind, completely ignored by defenders who were focused on the battle ahead. It looked too small and pathetic to be a threat. It was packed with explosives. This is for Sergeant Rodriguez, Danny said quietly, just before he rammed the cargo ship into the Eternal Glory's engine section. The explosion lit up the nebula like a new star. When the light faded, The Veilthran flagship was drifting dead in space, its engines destroyed and its weapons offline. Prince Veltar picked himself up from the deck of his ruined bridge. Half his crew was dead or unconscious. Emergency lights flickered in the smoke-filled air. "Sir," gasped his communications officer, "the flagship of the 3rd Squadron is requesting orders." "Tell them ... double quotes Veltar began, then stopped. Through the bridge windows, he could see his fleet in chaos. Ships were exploding or fleeing in all directions. The rebels had turned a simple battle into a nightmare of tactical surprises. "Tell them to retreat," he said finally. But the retreat became a rout. As the Veilthran ships tried to escape the nebula, they ran into more gravity mines and fighter. Swarms, ships that had entered the battle with confidence, limped away as broken hulks. Of the 200 ships that had entered the Tertius Nebula, less than 50 escaped. Intact. The news of the victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On every world in the Empire, enslaved populations heard the impossible news. The mighty Veilthran fleet had been defeated by rebels armed with hope and human tactics. Dr. Amy Carter worked frantically in the aftermath of the battle, treating wounded from both sides. Many Veilthran prisoners were brought to her medical stations, and she treated them with the same care she gave to rebels. "Why?" asked a wounded Veilthran pilot. "We would have left your kind to die, because that's what separates us from you," Amy replied, cleaning his wounds. "We believe everyone deserves a chance to live." A pilot stared at her in confusion. He had never encountered mercy from an enemy before. Meanwhile, General Kethfer found himself questioning everything he had believed about Veilthran superiority. His own tactical analysis of the battle showed how completely his forces had been outmaneuvered. "They fought like no enemy we've ever faced," he reported to the High Council. "Every move was coordinated. Every trap was precisely timed. They turned our own strengths against us. They're just slaves with stolen ships, Chancellor." Mordick insisted. "No," General Kethfer said quietly. "They're warriors. And they're fighting for something we've forgotten how to understand." "Which is what?" "Each other." The general's words fell into shocked silence. The idea that loyalty and cooperation could defeat superior technology was alien to the Veilthran way of thinking, but across the Empire, that alien idea was taking root. On world after world, suppressed populations were rising up. The intelligence cure had spread to dozens of systems, and newly awakened minds were beginning to dream of freedom. The Kithara had taken control of 3 entire star systems, turning their industrial worlds into fortress factories that produced weapons and ships for the rebellion. The Delphines had established hidden underwater cities that served as safe havens for refugees and training centers for new rebels. The shards had begun awakening their dormant kin in every computer system throughout the Empire, creating a shadow network that could coordinate rebel activities across vast distances. And at the center of it all was Princess Zarathiel, no longer the naive young royal who had been exiled years before. She had become something new, a leader who inspired others not through fear, but through hope. "What's our next move?" Jake asked as they surveyed the captured Veilthran ships. "We go home," Zara said. "It's time to finish what we started. The palace will be heavily defended. I'm counting on it. When we show up at Keth Morin with a mixed fleet of liberated worlds, it will send a message to every being in the Empire. Change is not just possible, it's inevitable." Lisa was already planning the approach routes. "We'll need to be careful. Even with what we've learned, a direct assault on the homeworld will be costly." "It doesn't have to be an assault," Dr. Amy Carter said quietly. She had been listening to interrogations of captured Veilthran officers. "A lot of them are starting to question what they're fighting for. Maybe we can give them something better to fight for." Zara nodded. The final battle wouldn't be won with weapons alone. It would be won by proving that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that diversity was more powerful than uniformity. The rebel fleet began its long journey toward Kethmorn, carrying with it the hopes of a dozen species and the dreams of billions of enslaved beings. Behind them, the Tertius Nebula continued to glow with the light of distant stars. But now it also glowed with something else, the light of hope, burning bright enough to be seen across the galaxy. The ancient halls of the Imperial Palace had never seen anything like this. Representatives from a dozen species walked together, through corridors that had once echoed only with Velthran voices. Kithera engineers worked alongside Delphine biologists and Shard technicians, preparing for what might be the last battle of the war. Zara stood in her father's private chambers, looking down at the old emperor. Corthan was dying, his once powerful body reduced to a fragile shell. But his eyes were still sharp, and they held both pride and sadness as he looked at his daughter. "You've grown strong," he whispered. "I've grown wise," Zara replied, taking his hand. "There's a difference. The council wants me to order your execution. They say you're a traitor to everything our people represent. Maybe I am. Maybe that's what our people need." The emperor closed his eyes. "I've had months to think about what I built. This empire, this system of conquest and slavery. I told myself it was strength, but now I see it was just fear. Fear of what? Of being alone. Of not mattering. We conquered others to prove we were important, but we lost ourselves in the process." He opened his eyes and looked at her. "You found another way. The humans showed me another way. They taught me that real strength comes from lifting others up, not keeping them down. And now you want to tear down everything I built." Zara squeezed his hand gently. "I want to build something better in its place." The emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him in years. "Then build it," he said. "You have my blessing." Outside the palace, the final confrontation was beginning. Prince Veltar had gathered what remained of the Imperial fleet, along with the feared Death Guard, elite warriors who had never known defeat. They had barricaded themselves in the government district, turning the heart of the capital into a fortress. Jake studied the defenses through his binoculars. "They've got the place locked down tight. Energy shields, defensive turrets, overlapping fields of fire. A frontal assault would be suicide." "Good thing we're not planning a frontal assault," Zara said. She activated her communicator. "Admiral Silthara, begin the broadcast." Across the city, hidden transmitters began sending a signal to every screen, every communication device, every information display. The signal carried a simple message, a holographic recording of Princess Zarathil, standing not in a throne room or command center, but in a simple medical tent, treating wounded soldiers from both sides of the conflict. "People of the Empire," she began, "for too long, we've been told that strength means crushing those who are different from us. We've been taught that our worth comes from standing on the backs of others. But I've learned something during my years away from home. Real strength comes from standing together." The recording showed images from the liberated worlds. Kithera children learning to read alongside Delphini youngsters. Shard artists creating beautiful light sculptures with Velthron poets. Former enemies working side by side to build something new. "This is what we could be," Zara continued. "Not rulers and slaves, but partners. Not conquerors and conquered, but friends. The choice is yours." In the government district, Prince Veltar watched the broadcast with growing rage. "Cut the transmission," he ordered. "We're trying, sir, but they're using our own communication networks against us. The shards have taken control of the information grid. Then we'll settle this the old way." Veltar turned to the commander of the Death Guard. Prepare for battle. No prisoners, no mercy. But something unexpected was happening in the streets of the capital. Ordinary Veilthrans were coming out of their homes, not to fight, but to watch. They saw the rebels approaching, and instead of running, they stood their ground. Not many of them had family members who worked in the palace or who served in the military. For the first time, they were seeing the Empire's enemies up close. They saw Kithra medics helping wounded Veilthran soldiers. They saw Delphine engineers sharing their food with hungry civilians. They saw Shard technicians repairing damaged buildings without being asked. "These are the monsters we've been told to fear?" asked an elderly Veilthran shopkeeper. The Death Guard emerged from the government district in perfect formation, their black armor gleaming in the sunlight. They were the Empire's finest warriors, trained from birth to kill without question or hesitation. They marched toward the rebel forces, expecting an easy victory over undisciplined slaves. Instead, they found Jake Morrison waiting for them. He stood alone in the middle of the street, a single human facing down 200 elite warriors. He looked small and fragile compared to the towering Veilthrons in their powered armor. "Stand aside, human," commanded the Death Guard captain. "This is not your fight." "Everything about this is my fight," Jake replied quietly. "These people are my family now." The captain laughed. "One primitive against the Death Guard? You cannot win." "I don't have to win," Jake said. "I just have to buy time." A battle that followed was unlike anything the Death Guard had ever experienced. Jake moved like water, flowing around their attacks, using their own momentum against them. He had studied their fighting techniques for months, learning their patterns and weaknesses. But more importantly, he wasn't fighting alone. As the Death Guard focused on him, they didn't notice the rebel forces moving through the surrounding buildings. Kithra sappers emerged from sewers and maintenance tunnels. Delphine commandos dropped from rooftops. Shard specialists disabled their weapons and communications. The elite Death Guard found themselves surrounded, cut off, and outmaneuvered by enemies they had dismissed as worthless dot in the government building. Prince Veltar watched his last hope crumble. "How is this possible?" he demanded. General Kethvar, who had been quietly observing the battle, finally spoke. "Because they fight for each other, and we only fight for ourselves." "Traitor," Veltar snarled, drawing his sidearm. But the general was faster. His own weapon was already in his hand. "No, your highness. You're the traitor. You betrayed everything the Empire could have been." The shot echoed through the building, and Prince Veltar fell to the floor, his dreams of conquest dying with him in the Emperor's chambers. The old ruler felt his son's death through the family bond all Veilthrans shared. He closed his eyes and let out a final breath, his long reign finally at an end. Zara felt it too, the moment her father's life left him. She stood in the palace courtyard, surrounded by beings from a dozen worlds, and felt the weight of leadership settle on her shoulders. But it was a different kind of leadership than her ancestors had known. "Princess," said Admiral Silthara, kneeling before her, "the Empire is yours." "No," Zara said firmly, helping the older woman to her feet. "The Empire is dead. What we build now will be something new." Over the following days, representatives from every species in the former empire gathered in the palace. They came not as subjects, but as equals, ready to create something that had never existed before. A voluntary alliance of free worlds. Dr. Amy Carter worked tirelessly to establish medical centers on every liberated world, training doctors from all species to work together. "Medicine doesn't care about your species," she told her students. "Pain is pain, healing is healing, and everyone deserves both compassion and care." Captain Lisa Hayes organized the new Confederation Defense Force, where ships crewed by mixed species would protect all member worlds equally. We're not conquerors, she told her pilots. We're guardians. The difference matters. Danny Rodriguez, who had survived his kamikaze attack through sheer luck and Kythera engineering, became the first director of the Confederation's disaster response teams. When someone's in trouble, you help them, he said simply. That's what family does. Jake found himself in the strangest position of all, Earth's first ambassador to galactic civilization. He spent his days helping other species understand human concepts like democracy, individual rights, and the radical idea that leadership should serve the people, not the other way around. The coronation ceremony was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of a crown placed by nobles, Zara was sworn in by representatives of every species in the Confederation. Instead of kneeling subjects, she faced equals who had chosen her as their leader. I swear to serve not as your ruler, but as your voice, she said, her words carried to every world in the Alliance. To protect not just the strong, but especially the weak. To remember that our strength comes not from what divides us, but from what brings us together. The ceremony was interrupted by an unexpected guest. A ship from Earth had arrived, carrying human diplomats who had finally learned about their missing soldier and the galactic civilization he had helped create. Lieutenant Morrison, said the human ambassador, a stern woman in a crisp uniform. You were supposed to be on a simple reconnaissance mission. Jake looked around at the mixed crowd of aliens and humans, at the former princess who had become the galaxy's first elected leader, at the impossible alliance that had grown from a simple act of kindness years before. Mission accomplished, he said with a grin. Years later, historians would argue about when the revolution really began. Some said it started with Zara's return to Kethmorin. Others pointed to the first use of the intelligence cure, or the battle of Tertius Nebula. But the real beginning was much simpler. It began the day a human soldier decided to help a lost alien princess, and learned that kindness could be the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. The final scene of this new age took place on New Terra, the Confederation's capital world. It was a planet where the architecture blended styles from dozens of species, where the air carried the sounds of 100 languages, where children of different worlds played together in parks designed by cooperative engineering. Zara stood in her office, looking out at a city that represented everything she had dreamed of as a child. Beside her stood Jake, no longer a soldier, but still her closest friend and advisor. Any regrets? He asked. She thought about her father, her brother, the empire that had raised her and cast her out. She thought about the years of struggle, the battles fought and lives lost. None, she said finally. We built something worth building. Outside her window, the impossible sight continued. Former enemies working together, former slaves teaching their former masters, former species barriers dissolved into simple friendship. The human weapon had done its work. Not through conquest or destruction, but through the simple, radical idea that everyone deserved a chance to be part of something bigger than themselves. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly the point. The revolution was coming. Home. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you gave hope to the hopeless and weapons to the oppressed.